Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life with Nicola and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show. Kalispera.
Hello, Gorge. How are you?
I'm looking at the most enormous moon over Sydney Harbour. It's absolutely stunning.
Brilliant. It's well, you're on what day are you on? The 21st. Last night was the supermoon and the spring solstice, I think we call it.
That's right. Yes.
Yes. Brilliant.
So I'm one day over, but my God, it's absolutely stunning. It's enormous.
Yes.
And it's
it should be. Yes. Perfect. I'm slightly annoyed that I didn't see it last night.
Yeah. And there's just enough cloud going past to really make a contrast. It's wonderful. Wonderful.
So is it dark?
Yes, it's very dark now. Yes, it's 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock at night, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether to tell you or tell the listener, but obviously I'm going to tell you exactly the same things as I told you last week. So you've already heard all my news.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Tell the listener why we're doing that, because I forgot to press
you tell. Yeah. Well, I don't think you did. Didn't you turn it off because you were there uncharacteristically early or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I my own efficiency tripped me up.
Yes. And that means that the gentle listener might as well know that we're recording this the day before we go live, which is a bit hairy for us, isn't it?
It's all right. It's all going to be fine. I'm on it.
Yes. Good. Right. Well, tell us are you telling us about the week since we last spoke, or like me, the week before we last spoke?
I'm going to mix it up.
Yes, my news is so out of date, it's not true. Right. You go first.
Okay. Well, as you know, I flew to Australia and the flight wasn't so bad. And I arrived in a very humid and warm Sydney and came to my brother's flat, and everything went well about getting in with the key and everything. And he'd filled the fridge and there was some delicious rosé wine chilling for me and lots of little snacky bits because he thought I probably wouldn't want to cook, and that's true. And I spent a couple of days here on his very lovely, Steve would have loved this place. It's so bachelor pad minimalist, it's unbelievable. And so I spent a couple of days trying to get over the jet lag and didn't really manage it before I had to go up to the Gold Coast, and went up to the Gold Coast, spent 4 nights in a Airbnb with Neil, and we had a real laugh. And do you know what the weird thing? I've got so many spooky law of attraction moments for you on this episode, Judith. You're going to love it.
Okay, cool.
But I walked in, and literally within 2 minutes, he said, "So what have you been up to then, Ken Cross?" And I said, "Oh, I'm learning how to write a sci-fi novel." And he said, "No." And I said, "What?" And he said, "So am I." And he's actually been neck deep in sci-fi, and he wants to learn how to write a book. And so we spent the next 2 or 3 hours not even talking about the conference at all, just talking about, Storygrid and all the stuff I've been sharing with you guys. And it was such a weird coincidence because we haven't spoken for months.
I bet he would have been a good student and lapped up all of your Storygrid stuff as well, wouldn't he?
Yes, he did, yes. And he's going to listen to it on now. I've put him onto it. But he just said, it actually gave him goosebumps that I walked in and the first thing I started to talk about was the thing he's been obsessed with for the last few months. It's
well, really I think we forget how we are all connected.
Yes. And how we're all connected to people that we like. So it's not...
Oh, quite.
In a way,
no, not really at all, is it? No.
I'm going to tell you about the actual conference later in the show. But
okay.
Yeah, so Gold Coast, really nice, really lovely. Bit like America, very spread out. Low-rise buildings, apart from the downtown area where they've built a casino, which is modelled on half of the Titanic, which I didn't get to see because we were too busy.
Thank God. Oh, gosh.
Yeah. And then I flew back very delayed to, as you know, because we were going to do something, weren't we, one night?
Yeah, we were going to do this the night before last, but
right, yeah.
You were only arriving at the airport at our appointed hour, if you remember.
Yeah, I was about 3 hours delayed. It was a bit tragic, but I had a very nice time. The airport's lovely. I didn't think I'd ever say that about an airport, but it was full of really hot, macho Australians with square beards and lots of lovely blondes in flimsy dresses and things, and everyone was eating quinoa and just having a lovely, healthy time. It was very, very. Imagine what the Gold Coast would be like.
Well, what is the airport called? Because last week you said it had its own name, but you couldn't remember. Can you remember
I can't
now?
remember. It's still
and
longer or something.
Yes, and what that we would have heard of if we're not Australian is on the Gold Coast?
Nothing, I don't think.
So, which city was your show in?
Well, it was on the Gold Coast, which is growing into a city by itself, really. The nearest city is Brisbane.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so it's up the right-hand side a bit. But it's where Brett McFall lives, and everything's on the water. So they've dug out a whole canal system because they know that waterfront property is more valuable. And it was really funny because the taxi driver was saying to me, don't, for God's sake, get in the canals. He said, that's where the bull sharks live. And I said, really? He said, yeah, there was a criminal trying to get away from the police last week, and he didn't even take his clothes off. He dived in and swam across the canal, and all the police were standing there going, well, good on you, mate. If you make it across, you're...
Yes, you deserve to escape.
Exactly. So what about your week then?
Good question, yes. This wasn't my week. This was weeks ago, but... I think 2 weweeks ago tomorrow, I had the day off to go and visit my friend Sharon, with whom I lived in Kent for the year of 2017 when I wrote my book. Yeah. Well, we were in a stately pile then, but actually she wanted to buy it and the landlady sold it to somebody else. And Sharon, whose business is about homelessness, emergency housing for people in need of housing, herself was living in difficult circumstances between leaving the stately pile and acquiring her own new home. She was buying a brand new home, and the builders had done up a nice row. I know this because I've been to see it now. Had done up a nice, they'd invented in the middle of nowhere, built from scratch, 4 or 5 beautiful houses, and Sharon's bought one of those. But for some unknown reason, and obviously I'm going on later to tell you a story about conveyancing and selling flats and things, the builder couldn't get his act together to get the NHBC house guarantee things that you have to have in order for the lender to advance the funds and you to complete on the property. So he built these houses in the middle of nowhere, and he was desperate to sell them, obviously, as you would be, and realise your capital. But because he couldn't get his paperwork organised, all the people gagging to buy it, and indeed his bank manager presumably gagging to receive the funds, were delayed by months.
Oh, God.
I know, the ineptitude.
Yeah.
Well, it's just bureaucracy and how difficult it is to do quite a lot of things, I think. I don't know. Because I kept asking, why can't you get this form? I don't know. Anyway, the day I went to visit her, and it was lovely. And it's lovely to see a friend that is, has been living, as I have for some time, in her own new home and nearly unpacked and happy about it. And the neighbours visiting and all moaning about this builder, who I think is quite a nice chap, but he just delayed everybody's... I was thinking this morning in the bedroom, estate agents and conveyancers should never be allowed to go away on holiday. End of. Because the rest of us, their customers, are in such high dudgeon and distress and stress and emotional stuff when we're trying to buy and sell. And they always go away, it seems to me. It's like at the crucial point.
You'd think they'd brief someone else in the office, wouldn't you?
They never do they? They just. I tell you what I think it is. It's the same lesson I learned when I was an accountant. It's if every day of your life you're just surrounded by piles of paperwork, whether it be digital or physical, it's just like you go into the office as another day of the same. You go into the office, and so you have to block yourself off, like doctors, I think. You have to block yourself off from the emotion that your clients bring to your work. Otherwise, you never get a thing done. And so for them, it's just process. And a holiday is a week or 2 weeks break in process.
The thing that makes me stop and pause there, apart from the beautiful sight of the lit ferries sailing across the Black Sea under the moon, it's just amazing, is how miserable we've made ourselves with all this bureaucracy. And, it's just so miserable, isn't it, for people who have to push these piles of paper around?
Well, I think that came across, I hope it came across in my book, which was, it was so easy when I first started being self-employed, and now it isn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the only difference is the creeping, well, it's not even creeping, it's sort of galloping rise of, from Y2K to, what was that thing called before GDPR? What was the thing? VATMOS.
VATMOS,
yeah. I mean, certificates. Well, you should have a certificate with a brand new house. Of course you should.
Yes.
But wouldn't it be wonderful if it was everybody's goal to make this all easy for everybody, not hard for everybody?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you there's some police in Cardamili whose job it and delight it is to make things difficult for people, because you turn up with 15 pieces of paper and they say you're missing a 16th that nobody's ever mentioned before, and it is literally a power trip. Apparently, they just love to make.
I wonder about that. Actually, I wonder whether being a bureaucrat or a state employee is so miserable it's the only fun you can get.
Yes. I suspect so.
Do you know what I mean? Would we be like that if we worked for them? We might be.
No, I don't
anyway, so that was
stick it out anyway.
Anyway, so that was my first day out. My second day out, as you know, was Cath and I went to Tom Kerridge's Bar and Grill in the Corinthia Hotel with the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Thomas Cox, the GM and I saw him, and I made up my mind in advance that if I saw him, I was going to speak to him. Luckily for him, he was on the phone. Otherwise, I would simply I would have gushed all over him. That's what I would have done. But his hotel is beautiful. We were sort of pointing at those. Do you remember those geometrically striped cups and saucers that they debated? Yes, we saw those. It was like, oh my God, it's so great here. Do you know what's really fantastic? It wasn't expensive. It was 24 for 2 courses, 29 for 3. Obviously, it's 48, half each of the bill by the time you get there, because you've had a glass of wine and coffee and, whatever. But what's brilliant if you're in a place like that is how seamlessly everything runs. So, for instance, Cath got there before me, and I came and I said who I was, and they took me to my table, and I was a little bit cold, so I wasn't prepared to give away my coat at the front desk. But by the time I got to the table, I was, and I gave the lady my coat, and she took it away, and she brought me back this leather, like key fob thing, which would enable me to get my coat back later. And she put it down on the table next to me. She said, "There you go, Miss Morgan."
So she knew your name?
Well, she'd made it her business to call me, find out my name and call me by my name and remember it. So, and what happens as well, as you know, and we've loved this before on this show, is when people come to the table, they don't go, "Who's having the lobster?" They just put it down in front of whoever ordered it, it's so easy that it is just staff training. You get them to own it, love it, take pleasure in it. We love it. We're nice to them as a result. It's just win, 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 win. And the icing on the cake was I'd done intense planning for my trip to London about where I was going to park, and I knew I was going to park right outside the front door. I've lived in Westminster for 8 years of my life. I knew I didn't have a residence parking permit anymore, but I knew where all the spots were. I downloaded the app, which tells you in real time, where the spaces are, how many there are of them, and I monitored it for a week, and I could see that parking was going to be a dream. When I got there, it wasn't, because what the parking app doesn't reveal is that all of the streets are closed for building works, and there were men in high-vis vests and hard hats and reversing trucks and cement mixers and beep, beep, beep and noise, and all the parking was shut off. And I panicked slightly and started praying and doing some of my Abraham stuff. But in the end, a miracle did happen, which is in the street behind, which was all shut off. It was shut off. It turned out to be shut off for a different reason. There was a man in charge of it. He said, "Are you looking for somewhere to park?" I am. He gave me a free spot for 2.5 hours because he'd shut the street off because they were making a Marvel movie.
Oh, marvellous.
And he just liked the look of me. He just liked the look of me and let me have a space for free in Westminster for 2.5 hours. I couldn't get over it. And when I got back, I was trying to give him a £20 note to say thank you very much. He wouldn't take it. And then later in the week, I sent him a text saying, "Thank you so much." And he just emailed back to say, "My pleasure." And it was so jolly to discover that there are people in the world who just do nice things for other people because they can.
He must have taken a shine to you through your front windscreen.
Well, he'd seen me go around the block a couple of times, and he knew what the local circumstances were, and he knew that actually his film crew had made it worse for the day, even worse for the day. So, he'd got a whole street blocked off, and they were using some of them, but not all of them. And he'd seen me look longingly at, one or two, and he made one available to me.
Marvellous.
Anyway, I've got more news in this section. I'm prepping for an exit from here. I'm in my last 2 or 3 weeks of Bromley. So I've had a plumber, mended the toilet seat, booked a gardener to redo the window boxes so they've got something nice to come home to.
Nice.
And I've had a third PPI win.
Really?
Yes.
Dare I ask how many figures this time?
It's still 4 figures, not quite as big as the last one, but it's big-ish.
Oh, nice.
It's gratifyingly large.
Yes. Yeah. lovely. I'm so convinced about Esther and Abraham. I can't tell you, and I'll tell you later why.
Yes, good. But before. Then tell me what's fueled your fire.
What's fueled my fire? Well, on the flight over, I finished the Storygrid podcast, which I've worked out now is nearly 200 episodes, which means I've done nearly 200 hours of intensive studying about writing a story since Christmas, which is quite impressive, isn't it, when you think about it?
Well, I don't think I could contain my interest even in something I'm interested in for 200 hours. I think that is impressive, yes.
Well, I think the fact that they've got nice voices to listen to helps. Not so nice that I fall asleep, but nice enough that I can bear to listen to 2 or 3 hours at a time. And on the plane, I did the last 10 hours. I was quite disappointed when it finished. So I've now moved on to, because they also cover non-fiction, big idea books, a bit like, your book. And I'm now on to one of them has got a podcast called Book Launch. And I'm listening to that now as well. And I'm really enjoying that. But I've also started reading a thing called The Story by Robert McKee, which is all about filmmaking. And he goes through the basic elements of, oh my God, there's actually a coloured double ring around the moon now, Judith. It's orange and purple around the outside.
Look at you, you've gone all moony. I've talked about the moon on this show for years.
Well, normally I see it in Greece when I'm walking up the hill, and I have seen colours around it like this for a long time. Anyway, so I started reading this book, and I do keep falling asleep, I must say, but that's only because I'm jet lagged, not because it's boring. It's very good, and it's giving me lots of films to watch. And I'm a little bit reluctant to watch a film on my own because I always feel somehow subconsciously it should be a social activity.
Oh, I feel exactly the opposite. The only way I can focus is by doing it, but mainly by myself.
I know. Steve used to feel the same. If you even breathed wrong, you were in trouble.
I mean, it depends what sort of thing it is. If it's a rom-com, I could watch it with somebody else. But if it's a serious thing I'm studying for the Oscars, I prefer to do it by myself.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, anyway, so every time they talk about a particular point, they tell you which films to watch to illustrate the point.
That's nice. Yes.
Yeah, and Chinatown's coming up quite a lot. Have you seen that?
I have, about 40 years ago with Don't Tell Me, Jack Nicholson and Faye Dunaway.
Well, blimey, two of my favourite actors, so I must have seen it.
Let me just check, actually, because it is those two, Chinatown. I was also Googling Robert McKee because his name is familiar to me. Is he actually a filmmaker?
I think he's a director or something, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, lots of people have recommended his book, and it's actually an easier read than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, lots of films coming up, and I'm sort of thinking that there's another reason to watch a film now, rather than it being a purely social event. I can do it as an educational event.
Oh yes, that's a good point. I was right about those two. However, there's a downside to Chinatown, and that is it's directed by Roman Polanski. And you know about him, do you?
Well, I do know he's one of those people who've been defrocked, as it were.
No, well, he's not allowed back into America because of interfering with teenage girls a long time ago, and I think he's not welcome in quite a lot of countries because he's a
paedophile. Let's not put a too strong a point on it.
I don't know. Let's. And what's the word when you're not allowed to say they are? An alleged paedophile. Let's say.
Okay, yeah.
And let's not bring paedophilia into our podcast. But he's not one of my faves. Nor the Academy, actually. Nor the Academy. He did win Best Original Screenplay for. Well, let me see who did win Best Original Screenplay. It might be a man. Anyway, whatever. I mean, it's a good film.
I mean. Well, we should talk about this another time, whether we should stop watching films by anyone who's been tarred by the same brush, or whether we should accept the art as a standalone item no matter where it came from.
I do think we should discuss that at some times, because actually my friend Daphne, who writes books, who I mentioned to you, maybe on the show we didn't record, she says every good novel, and therefore every good screenplay, must hinge on a moral dilemma, and this is a moral dilemma.
Yes. So we can
quite a serious one, actually, isn't it?
Especially for us feminists.
Well, and also for those of us who used to love Kevin Spacey.
Yes, a lot. Yes. American Beauty, brilliant film.
No, I hate that film actually because it's about men being weird with young teenage women.
Yes, but you know what? You've got to be driven by their loins, aren't they? Which is just so tragic and pathetic. It's unreal.
I don't want to listen to this. Honestly, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on
Now,
then.
yes. Now, keep going with your fueled your fire, because this is cool.
No, that's it really. I'm all fueled out on this one. I'm
Okay.
just still neck deep in trying to write a good story.
I think Robert McKee has made television programs. I'm going to look him up between
Probably.
now. I certainly know of him.
This book, The Story, it's just Story in one word.
It's his story. Yes, I just saw it on Amazon. Yeah, cool. Okay.
It's supposed to be very good.
So, what's fueled my fire? Two things in different ways, completely different ways, actually. The fueled your fire is the sense of wow that occurs to me when me and you and clients are starting to get these fabulous results, often in threes, from the Abraham experiments. You know, this wow and excitement and anticipation and vibe raising. It's bringing quite mind-blowing things into my life, one of which I can't tell you about yet, but another one I can tell you very quickly about, which is I discovered that instead of moving out of here on the 9th of April, I'm moving out of here on the 12th of April. There are 3 extra days on the end of the gig that I didn't know I'd got. That's not the wow. The wow is that my nephew wrote to me on Monday or Tuesday saying, can we bring our cat over to you for 2 weeks at Easter? Because we're going to America and you're the only person I know that likes cats. Oh, yes, you can. However, I don't know where I'll be living at Easter and I don't know whether cats will be acceptable. I'm moving out of here on the 12th of April. And he said, oh, we're going on holiday on the 12th of April. Would you like to come and live here instead? So I've got a 2-week cat sitting gig.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but on the day it happened, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, I was sitting at my desk where I am now and I was thinking, I'm not sure that I want 2 weeks in Gareth's flat in Brixton looking after their cat. And the cat that visits me every day and sits on the garden fence and just nips over the wall and goes into the garden, he sat, and I was talking to Marion at the time, he sat on the garden fence, honestly, without a word of a lie, and stared at me through the window. He stared at me as if to say, are you a nutter, Judith? This place is available on the day that you are to become homeless. Go to Brixton for 2 weeks and look after Gareth's cat. I mean, that is a sort of Abraham thing, which is you're homeless on the 12th. Here's somewhere to live for 2 weeks on the 12th.
And the cat was staring at you in such a way that you knew he was trying to tell you something.
I did, because I'm a cat person. It's like the cat was getting me to review my not sure about it-ness. And immediately I wrote to Gareth and said, I've changed my mind. You know how woo-woo I am. A cat on the garden fence just stared at me. I'm coming on the 12th. And he wrote back to say, amazing, see you soon. And he's chuffed to bits and already organised my parking permit. So,
well, you know, Brixton's come up in the world a lot. You're going to have fun.
Oh, I'm not worried about Brixton, because that's where I was living before, and I've always lived in Brixton. Not worried about that. But it's what I'm obsessed with is what Abraham calls the path of least resistance. That's the path of least resistance, and I nearly resisted it. And that's what she talks about all the time. She says you put into the vortex something you want, somewhere to live on the 12th, and then you put in all of these reasons why you can't have it easily. Oh, I'm not sure about Brixton. Oh, I'm not sure about a walk-up former council flat. Oh, I'm not sure about going back to Brixton. Oh, where will I park you? You know, and that's like, oh, get it over yourself, Judith. Just say yes.
We worry about so much, don't we? I'm exactly the same.
I know.
It's
the over-engagement of the logical brain assessing everything.
Yeah. I mean, I came here and I didn't know where. I mean, I think I'm actually staying in the Mayfair of Sydney. It's just amazing. There's so many incredible restaurants around, and it's so zhushy and chichi. But I thought it was King's Cross, and I didn't think it was going to be very nice at all before I came. I was worried sick about it, but it's absolutely glorious.
Well, I've written a list of questions for Gareth this morning. Bins, Wi-Fi code, keys, flights, dates, sheets, bed, bring, cats requirements, parking controlled hours, walk up or elevator, particularly for unloading, microwave and espresso machine. You know, don't really need any of that, to be honest, but it's the sort of detail I like to be across before I go and stay somewhere for 2 weeks, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, now, so my other thing in what's fueled your fire, and it's fueled it in the opposite way, is I've uninstalled all my 3 news apps. So I've actually got no idea any longer what's going on in the world.
I think that's a good idea.
Well, I did it once before for 10 years, from when I gave the television away in 97 until 2007. And I didn't really get back into the news until Brexit, which was 2 years ago. And now I've no idea what's going on in Brexit, except what I see on Twitter and Facebook, which is this morning they want us to sign another petition. But it's like, I don't really know anymore. I don't really care anymore. And actually, I don't seem able to improve it in any way. So maybe absenting myself from the whole thing will be better. Who knows? I've got more time on my hands. I'm emotionally slightly less worried, but I'm completely uninformed. And that's okay. It's okay for now, anyway. Why I did it, I'll tell you why I did it, Nicola. It's the Abraham thing again. The news is the wrong vibe if you're going to live in the wow.
Yes, it totally is.
Mm.
I haven't. I mean, like you say, important things do get through, and
Yes.
I'm sadly very aware of the horrendous events that happened in New Zealand, which I'm not sure if the British press will report at all.
No, we are.
It's all over Australia here.
Yes,
and but actually, I can't do anything about it, and if I dwelled on the details, it would just be incredibly upsetting, and I wouldn't be able to do anything about it. So, I know about it. I'm very sorry about it, and that New Zealand president, Prime Minister or whatever it is, seems to be really moving very fast to sort
totally playing a blinder, isn't she?
Yeah. Well done for her. And apparently that happened in Australia 26 years ago when there was a big massacre here. They just totally reevaluated their gun laws immediately and took action. It was amazing. Yeah. I was watching an interview with President Obama, listening to an interview with President Obama last night on this podcast that has reached its 1,000th anniversary. And just before the 1,000th episode, they interviewed Obama, and he was talking about the whole gun thing. And he was just saying, other countries just move so swiftly. We are the only country in the world that has it enshrined in law that we can't move as swiftly to sort it out. It's just nonsense.
Yes. I think it's in their constitution, isn't it? The right to bear arms. Yes. Yeah. That's quite serious, quite central to your identity, you see.
Yeah. So what are we doing for Focus of the Week then?
Well, we're doing a guest, Cath Couzens, PR, the lady I had lunch with at Kerridge's, and she's going to talk to us about Small is Beautiful. Her website is weareperception.com. She loves the podcast very much. She's the one that talks to us when she's listening to us.
Excellent. Suitably bonkers behaviour.
Yes. Okay, so I'll start. Hello, Cath. How are you?
Hi, Judith. I'm great. I'm full of cold, but I'm here. And in that famous phrase of ours, I'm cracking on.
I'm admiring of you being here because I know you're a little bit nervous, and you are the second of 4 calls we're doing today, and everybody is nervous. So don't worry about that, okay?
Yeah, I am a podcast virgin, so it's a really exciting to be here, and I'm an avid listener of the show. So thank you for having me here this morning.
Well, I was thinking while I was waiting for you to come that if I needed to calm you down, I would say just think of it as contributing to something you already know and love.
Exactly.
Okay. Good. So we are quite strict about timings on these. We'd like you to take a minute or two to tell us about you and then crack straight on into your topic, love.
No problem. So my name's Cath. I have had a PR and events and marketing agency since 2004. Before that, I mainly worked in hotels and event venues all over the UK, from stately homes and unusual venues to 5-star luxury hotels. My father had his own business and was always really inspiring to me, and I went on holiday to India with my then partner and said I still really want to do something on my own, and I still really want to have my own business. And he said, I think you should go for it when we get back and write up a business plan. So I handed my notice in to my then employer, which was a really lovely 5-star luxury hotel just outside of London, which I'd helped to launch. And they came on board as my first client. So I focused on doing hotel representation, which is basically business development for hotels. The website is weareperception.com. And over the last 14, 15 years, I've worked with all sorts of different hotels and venues, from 10-bedroom private houses, which are booked on an exclusive use basis, to uber luxury 5-star hotels in the UK, Europe, and all over the world.
And Abbey Road, aren't I right?
And Abbey Road, yes.
Oh, I love that. Being a Beatles fan, I totally love the Abbey Road vibe.
Yeah, it was fantastic working with Abbey Road. We used to do show rounds every month, and we did the record a song experiences, which were incredible. So going into the studios and actually getting event managers to come in and record a song and experience what it's like to be a recording artist.
Cath, why I didn't get invited to one of those when I knew you in those days, I do not know.
We need to see if we can get you into Abbey Road for a show round.
I would love to do that. Yeah,
it's a really special venue, as are all the properties that I've worked with. I think it's really important that if you're out on the road or you're talking to a journalist and you're selling in a story, that you're really passionate about the product that you're selling or promoting. And I've worked with some amazing places. I was once sent to the Maldives for 4 nights to go and check out a new hotel that a group over there was launching. I worked with Mandarin Oriental Hotel Group worldwide and ended up going to Asia for a week with a colleague to really get to know the hotels over there. So I've been really lucky. I've had some amazing experiences.
And one of your favourite ones now, I think I'm right, is in Bordeaux, isn't that right?
So not working with Bordeaux anymore, but still in touch with the owner and the managing director. The St. James in Bordeaux, absolutely gorgeous property. Small, fantastic food, very, very foodie, Michelin star, just outside of Bordeaux. Really beautiful gardens. Yes, gorgeous.
It sounds like a total luxury. I mean, your job has got lots of lovely perks, hasn't it?
It does have lots of perks, but I think sometimes when you're posting pictures on Instagram and Facebook, people see obviously the gloss. They see the glamorous side of it.
Yeah.
They don't see you doing the VAT return.
Yes.
And then, all the fun stuff, doing the strategies and, chasing journalists, following up stories.
Yeah.
There's lots of hard work that goes on behind the scenes, but I am really great. I'm a very grateful person. I always do my little 3 gratefuls for the week, if not the day. And I have had some amazing experiences and got to visit some incredible places.
Now, what are you going to talk to us about today?
So, small is beautiful.
Okay.
Which comes about because about 18 months ago, I had not a complete change of direction, but I decided to downsize the company and go back to really what I was doing when I first set the company up, which was working on my own from an office at home and working far more closely with clients, which came about for a number of reasons. I got really quite ill about 2 years ago, ended up in hospital, had a real think about my priorities and what I wanted to do. A couple of staff left. We had a couple of contracts that came to an end quite naturally. And it was one of those moments where I thought I either do it now or I probably won't do it at all. And it's something that I'd thought about for a while. And I didn't really want to go through the process of really downsizing. So the fact that a couple of staff left enabled me to really make that jump. And it wasn't that easy at the time. But the last, just under a year and a half have been really fantastic.
And tell us how, I don't know, just tell us about it. What's better? What's worse? What do you love? What do you miss?
Well, it was quite a challenging process to go through because it was a team of 6 to 8 people at its largest a good few years ago. We had an office. We had a lot of paper, which I know you hate. I had to completely downsize the office, pack everything up. My parents have a room full of stuff, which I really need to sort out, which has been there for over a year. And it felt, in some ways, I think it could have felt like a failure. It did a little bit, closing the door on the office and taking the sign down. But in the last year and a couple of months, I've never been happier. I think the reason being is that I suppose the benefits for clients are that I get to work a lot closer with them. So they have my full attention. I don't have as many clients now. And getting the balance, I think that's one of the challenges, getting the balance between working with clients and always having a bit of business development on the go. It can be a challenge, but I can come on to that in a moment. They get the benefit of my experience. which I'm now in my mid-40s, so I've been working with hotels. I mean, I did a hotel and catering management degree at the hotel school at Strathclyde Uni, so it's really all I've ever done. They also love me being based on property, so I have 2 clients that I now work with where I actually go to their hotel or restaurant and I work from their office. I have a hot desk, and that's really good. I get to catch up with the team. I get to catch up with the general managers, the operations team, the comms team, the marketing manager, and we can sit down and go through what's working, what isn't, if we need to tweak the strategy. I get to bring journalists in and meet them on site, or bring influencers in and meet them on site. And they get my full attention, so it works really well.
So they get a better result, I'm thinking, than when your staff were delivering it, a more personal service. And when you work on site, you get out of the house, so you're not just alone at home all of the time.
Yes, and I think, the results this year have been great. Don't get me wrong, I had a fantastic team and they did a really great job. But clients love dealing with the owner of the company, inevitably, or they really like to have that personal contact.
Yes.
And so far this year, just to give you an example, I've had 2 clients in the Guardian, I've had coverage in the Times, I've had a food review and travel review in the Daily Express, 1 client's been in the Scotsman and the Herald, I've had 3 clients in the iPaper, I've had clients in Cheshire Life and the Cheshire Magazine, lots of regional coverage. I've got a client on ITV this week. It's been a really strong start to the year.
You're just telling us, actually. I said just telling us. You're telling us you're very good at what you do.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are. You are. That's what you've just proved.
Well, I've never really been very good at blowing my own trumpet, but I'm really proud of the results that I'm delivering right now.
Yeah.
And I have some great relationships with journalists and also with bloggers. And I'm very happy to take groups of bloggers into hotels and restaurants and host them and, get them to experience new menus, take lots of photographs, and create really great content.
You're a very sociable person, which is one of the reasons why I'm about to meet you in real life for the second time. And the number of clients I've done that with is very tiny, Cath. We had a lovely meal out in Somerset, and now we're going to Tom Kerridge's, so it's beautiful for me too, this new arrangement of yours.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I am very sociable, but I think I'm a slightly secret introvert as well.
Yes,
I really like my own space, and I, in the winter I'm quite happy with my fire, just being relaxed and reading and chilled out, and I really like my downtime, actually going to kind of parties and events. I might do that a lot for work, but when it's my personal time, I really like my space and my garden.
There's a nice balance, yin and yang.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's so far this year. Last year was a great year. So far this year has been really strong, and I've just signed up my first, well, certainly in this guise, since I downsized, my first non-hotel client, which is really interesting. Completely different to hotels, but they need a hand with the marketing strategy, and they need some business development doing, which I've done for a long time, and they want to get out there and get their face in the trade magazines. So I'm really happy to take them on.
Cool. And don't tell us who they are, but tell us what niche are they in?
Transport.
Oh, okay.
So, nothing to do with hotels and restaurants and eating out, but it's the same process. It's exactly the same process, as you will know from coaching, and as you will know, Nicola, from working with clients. It doesn't really matter what industry they're in. Yes, I have huge experience in hotels and restaurants and travel, but it is exactly the same process that you go through when you look at the strengths and weaknesses, you look at who their audience is, you look at where their audience is hanging out, what they'll be reading, what they'll be listening to, what radio shows they'll be listening to, what TV shows do they watch, and then you start working towards that.
I've got a question.
Go for it.
Cath, you must be seeing, because if you're working with influencers, you must be seeing a big shift in how the younger people communicate. I'm talking under 30 now. So, as hotels traditionally haven't really embraced email marketing even, and they've A lot of them have only just got decent websites. How is it changing for you, and how are you having to take that into account?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it probably really changed or started to change about 2 to 3 years ago. And I remember hosting an overseas press trip where it was predominantly journalists who came along, and then we also threw a blogger into the mix as well, and it didn't work so well. And since then, I've kept both groups separate. I think it works better. Particularly, I think the micro influencers, although I don't tend to use the word influencers because a lot of the bloggers that I know prefer just to be called bloggers. They don't want to be called influencers.
Oh, okay.
Which is interesting. Particularly at a local level, if you're looking to launch a restaurant, it can be a very good and effective way of getting the word out there. And most of the bloggers that I've met are really good at photography. They have great cameras, and they really do take time to do photography courses and get the right images. And you can really create a bit of a stir on social media and get some great results. I mean, I've had quite a few bloggers who've come to restaurants with me recently who've actually gone back with their own friends and family, which is fantastic. And the engagement on their grid on Instagram has been really strong. And you can see people saying, "Oh, I'm going to book this. It looks really good."
Yeah. And do you find, so I'm interested in how you're doing your own business development, how you go and find new clients. But do you find also that you have to communicate with those people in a different way to the way you would communicate with journalists or even the business owners themselves?
Certainly the business owners is quite different. I still do structured reporting. They always want to see what's going on. That a lot of them used to really prefer print coverage. So there's nothing like being in the Times or being in a magazine. It makes, there's a certain amount of ego involved, I think, as well. But online coverage, you can share it, which is incredibly powerful. And I think certainly now, I wouldn't have said a few years ago, but certainly now owners really understand that. They use social media themselves. They're savvy. They understand how it works. So it can be incredibly powerful. What I always think is interesting, though, is it's about what's...
Oh, we lost her. Have you lost me?
A message. Hold there, Cath, for a second.
No problem.
Yeah. I'm back.
Oh, you're back. Okay. Oh. It was you we lost, Nicola.
Oh, okay, good. So
little bit of editing at this point in the middle.
Yeah. No problem.
Okay.
I heard about they use social media themselves, so they're starting to get it about sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that wouldn't have been the case a good few years ago, but certainly now everyone that I work with really gets it. But I'll never forget the time where I had one client who really, really wanted to be in Vogue. They read it themselves. They really wanted their spa to be in Vogue. They were absolutely fixed on it. So it was a hotel with a spa. So we got it in Vogue. Did it produce any results? No. It was very aspirational coverage. It looked fantastic on the page. It made them feel really good, and they were up there with the great and the good. But then we had a feature about the spa in a local newspaper and also in Good Housekeeping magazine. And it just switched the business on. It was incredible. The phones literally wouldn't stop ringing. So often you need to try different routes to market out to work out what works and what doesn't. But local media is really, really powerful. It can be fantastic.
Yeah, it was because you've foreshadowed my next question, which was going to be, how does the business owner know what PR is doing for them? But if like you say, if the phone starts ringing and bookings start coming and people say, "I saw you in the Worthing Herald" or whatever it is, then they know, don't they?
Exactly, and also Google Analytics, which as a PR manager I can have access to. and I can look at what's going on. I can look at where the traffic's coming from, and I can look at what's bringing traffic to their website. I'm also a big fan of having a reader offer at the end of a travel review or at the end of a food review, because then there is something really tangible that you can track to see whether it works. Although often people will rip a page out of a magazine, or they'll bookmark an online article and they'll use it weeks and months later. So that can be a challenge sometimes. But I'm currently working with a hotel that always relied on third-party booking agents. And for the first time ever, they are now receiving far more direct bookings than they are through a third party. Now, third parties definitely have their place, but you do need to pay them commission.
Yeah.
And lots of hotels will always say you'll get the best deal if you come direct.
Yeah.
And so for that property, it's been fantastic, because all of a sudden they've got this direct audience to work with. They're not paying as much commission. And that has coincided with me working with them on their social media.
And I shared an article from the mainstream press this week that said exactly that. And I shared it because I have, Liz who listens, who's got a B&B in Austria, and all of the people we know that run smaller hotels who rely on those third-party referrers but hate them.
Yeah. Well, it's no different out here in Greece. They're only just gearing up to get onto booking.com and things like that. But that involves, it's a complicated procedure. It involves specialist personnel who know how to use the software, because it isn't as easy as they make it.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, I've had some.
And also, there's the terrible tyranny of the review. One bad review will bring you down disproportionately. It's very disheartening. Anyway, let's not go there. Now, we are running out of time slightly. Cath, what have you got on your list you wanted to tell us you haven't got around to yet, if anything?
I think advice for anyone who's in the same situation.
Yes.
So I think at the moment, from what I read online, Instagram, listening to podcasts, there is a huge focus on scaling up. How to scale up your business. Bigger is better. And actually, I think it's not always better for everyone. I'm reading at the moment a really interesting book, so a book recommendation called The Company of One by Paul Jarvis.
Oh, yes, we're all talking about that. Yep.
And another one called Brand Brilliance by Fiona Humberstone, which I'm also really enjoying. But in terms of someone who was going into the same situation, looking at downsizing or starting up and looking at working from home, I think the key things I would say would be you have to put yourself out there. Networking is really invaluable. And I really hate that phrase, finding your tribe. I think it's really cheesy, but I have met some fantastic people through Instagram recently, and going to blogger events and networking with like-minded individuals, and who we've actually ended up co-working together, which is great for me. I work very efficiently from home. I have an office set up at home, so I can separate home life and work life. But actually, if you go to a co-working space, or I was showcasing one of my properties to do co-working from, and we work together from there for the day, it's really good to have people to bounce ideas off. So I think I'm a big fan of co-working. I think sometimes if you're working on your own, it can get a bit claustrophobic, and you need to get out there and see the blue sky and meet other people. And, everyone's going through the same challenges, which is actually really reassuring.
Yes, one of my clients offered the same challenge earlier in the week, and I suggested she should look for a co-working space. Yeah,
some of them I've tried, and it's been very much you work on your own and no one really talks to each other. But I've actually found other people that I've met at events who I've really got on with, and we've really clicked. And then I've been proactive and said, do you fancy doing a day of co-working together? So we've just gone to a cafe, and we've sat there for the day, the three of us with our laptops, but we've brainstormed ideas, and as a result we're now working on other projects together, which is really fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think on the business development side, you always have to have, again, that phrase of always having something in the pipeline or the funnel, because you never know when a client might change their mind, they might be sold. You just never know. So it's always important to have new opportunities in the pipeline coming through. So for me, networking is really invaluable.
Right, now, we could talk to you for longer, but we can't because we've got another one on in 5 minutes. But you sailed through it despite your nerves. Thank you so much.
It's an absolute pleasure. Lovely to be here. Lovely to be part of the podcast. And thank you very much indeed.
Okay,
Bye.
see you soon. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that was good, wasn't it?
It was. Now, do you have a word of the week?
I do. It's disorientated, because I still feel a bit disorientated even though the jet lag's passed. I feel a bit odd.
You didn't give yourself long enough. Sorry, love.
What do you mean? What, 3 days?
You need a day for every time zone you go through.
And how many time zones did I go for?
About 10, didn't you?
Well, you can't do 10 days just getting over jet lag.
I would have to. I know that my clients who travel the world, it's at least a week.
But you know what? I'm now over the jet lag and I'm in a flat on my own. And I went out with Alex yesterday and I went to meet the super fast business people and James Schramko and people like that last night. And I woke up this morning and I thought, I've got all day to do exactly what I want to. And I didn't do any of the things I wanted to. And I went and had an afternoon nap, Judith. That was very strange. And then I wandered down the road and got some stuff from what they call Woolworths, but is actually more like a Waitrose Deluxe down here. And then I came back and I thought, I'm so disorientated. I don't know what to do with myself because I'm not in my normal place.
Also, it's part of the lag. But how long have you been in Australia now? 8 days, 9 days, 10 days?
I've got no idea. It's not that long, surely.
And the point is, that's my point. You feel great now because you've been there 10 days.
Yes, but I don't still feel disorientated because I'm not in my normal environment. And I've got a lovely setup with my little office and everything. And it's just weird being in a different place. I feel disorientated.
Yes.
But I'll get over it.
Don't forget, you are in the other end of the world in every sense.
Yes, that's probably because everything's going down the plug hole the wrong way, isn't it?
Well, you're upside down. Yes, you are.
Oh, good. It's not just me then. I'm upside down. It's fine.
Yeah, you're upside down.
What's
either that or I am. Yes.
Yeah.
My word is still softness. And last week I spoke to you about needing a new pair of slippers and how cozy the sheets are and how my skin is soft and how much I love softness. And yesterday the visiting beautician was here and she went, "Oh, your skin is so soft." And I said, "How strange you should say that, because it's my word of the week on our podcast this week." Softness is a thing I like, Nicola. I like soft.
Yes, I'm growing to like soft more, I must say. I'm looking for it in my clothes, definitely.
Yes, not hair shirt. I think you've always liked it in your clothes. We like the feel of fabrics.
Yes, we do.
About your PUs, yeah.
Are you ready?
I am. Pin your lug-holes back, is that what you're saying?
Okay, yeah, get ready. Right, so I arrived at the Airbnb. We talked about writing for a little while, and then I said to Neil, "When am I on?" Because he said, I thought it was on Saturday, but it was actually Sunday, and I was on at 9:15. He said, "So you've got a day." He said, "We've got a cocktail party tonight, so come and chat to people." And I did that, and I found out, a few things that I could use in my presentation. Saturday, I sat in the room and mingled and schmingled and worked on my presentation just to tweak it, because it was something I did 2 years ago for him. And got to know a few people, which was nice. So I got on stage to a bunch of friends and absolutely smashed it out of the park, Judith. And the funny thing was, last time it was 25% of a room full of 120 people signed up for my membership site. And this time I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I could get to 30%? So I printed order forms for 60 people. And when I was getting to the stage of my presentation where they were handing out the order forms, because this was a generally non-selling event, but Neil said, make an offer because they'll love you. When I got to the bit where people were handing out the forms, walking down the rows and giving them out to, I'm not joking, it was a sea of hands that wanted it. And they actually ran out of forms. It was just so exciting. And I've got 60 new members because the room was 180 people. It was absolutely...
So you've got 60 people and you printed 60 forms?
Yes, and even better than that...
That's very law of attraction.
Well, that's what I thought. And even better than that, 3 people's cards didn't go through. There's always a few that, whatever reason, they've given you a card number that's too old. Anyway, whatever. So 3 people's cards didn't go through. So I was down to 58. And then when I got back to Alex's, there was 2 people who had decided that they wanted to sign up. So I was back to 60.
Oh, marvellous. That's what happened when we did a gig in London. Now, let me just check one thing with you here. Did you get all 60 to sign up for the annual one?
Yes.
And there's another thing. Well, there's another thing I need to check with you. Saturday, I sat in the room and tinkered with my presentation because it was 2 years since I'd done. So are you telling me you travelled all the way to Sydney, and the first moment you looked at your presentation you were going to make on a Sunday was the day before in the room?
Yeah.
You are a mad woman. I would have had to do that ages before I left England.
The thing is, it did 25% of the room signed up last time, so I knew it was a solid presentation. All I was doing was slightly updating it and adding a few things based on what the people I talked to on Friday night had said. And if you can actually include people in the room in your presentation, it really gets people going. They love it. And I was just adding jokes about Neil, to be honest.
And good, because he's robust enough to have jokes about him. Now, let me ask a question here, which is, do you think, given our propensity to be ahead of the curve always, do you think that your offer has come more into its own in those 2 years, so is less out there than it was 2 years ago, by which I mean the whole concept of Be Everywhere Online is more accessible to more people 2 years later?
I think what's going on, and I've thought about it a lot, is that the kind of people who are attracted to Amazon stores are people who are traditionally in business in the first place. Yep. People like products. People who are solid, serious business people. They like products. And what I generally do is sell to information people or experts who've got some sort of specialty, but it's much more information product orientated. This was 200 solid business people. You know, they'd had retail stores, they had hotels, they had, all sorts of real world businesses, and they were moving towards Amazon because they understood the concept of holding a product in your hand and selling it, buying it cheap and selling it higher and adding value to it by making it nicer. And they were often introverts, and they didn't understand social media at all. One after the other said to me, I'm not on social media. I know I need to do it. I've got no idea how to do it. It terrifies me. It bores me. But the way I laid it out for them, it made them realise that they can just outsource it to someone else, do the front end bits, and then outsource all the rest of it. And there was a step-by-step process. And they absolutely got that. And so the comments were just incredible. You know, life-changing presentation. You've taken away my fear of social media.
It may be a new demographic for you, which is introverted people who know nothing about social media.
Yeah, absolutely. And the best thing
I think it lends itself well to introverted people.
Yes, it does, because I'm an introvert, but I'm quite happy to get on stage and sit in front of a camera. But going out knocking on doors or selling or networking, I don't want to do any of those things. So, and it was just brilliant, because it means that I can now go after people who've got communities of Amazon entrepreneurs, and they are starting to emerge, those leaders. And I can say to them, look, I've got an offer that converts at 30% of the room. Even if it doesn't, because Neil, bigs me up, obviously, and it's obvious that we're great friends and there's a real chemistry between us. So people trust him. He's built a fantastic community of people who absolutely worship the ground he walks on. And we did 4 solid days. We did a cocktail party, 2 days in the room, lunchtime, drinks afterwards. Then we did a day of masterminding with his top end clients. And then we got back to the Airbnb. He had 1 hour off, and then he did a 3-hour Q&A where he got on the call. He really devotes himself to these people, and he's really doing a fantastic job. And by God, they love him. They really do. So I think that helped my sales conversions, because he trusts me, so they trusted me. And it probably wouldn't be as good with other audiences, but we can test that by doing webinars.
After those days, 3 or 4 or 5 days, however long it was that you've just described there, were you exhausted or on a big high?
I was on a big high. Yeah, it was physically exhausting, but mentally stimulating.
And as Elton John would say, when are you going to come down? Are you coming down at all? Because you often used to get terrible downs. Do you remember?
Yes, I did get very depressed, didn't I, afterwards?
After gigs, yes.
Yeah,
have you had that?
Yeah, no, I haven't yet. I think the triumph is so great that it's buoying me through.
Yes, you're coasting for a while.
Yeah. I went out for a really nice dinner tonight. I treated myself, and I'm actually thinking of flying home business class, because they I know, because they offered me a cheap upgrade on the way out here, and I think if they offer that to me when I check in to go home, I'm going to accept, because I did say to myself that if I do well, then I will fly back lying down.
Yeah, rewards are very important. Yeah.
Yeah, and lying down would be a great reward.
Oh, tell me about it. I couldn't go a third of that distance without lying down. I think it's amazing.
No, there you go. So it's great fun, and I've decided to go to Vegas now for the mastermind in Vegas, and because there's a lot of people there that could put me on a stage, and I think now I've got two, not just one fluke to report. I think I've got two solid performances. 25% of the room and 30% of the room is a very solid performance. So,
and you're back to selling from the stage, which is so much easier to take in a bulk number of clients than it is the piddling about thing that's been going on.
Yes, and the other thing I did, I offered them a 1-year amnesty. I said, you're going to be walking out of here completely overwhelmed, and I want you to have the benefit of the offer that Neil's negotiated with me, which is a great discount. But I know that you might not want to start for 3 months, 6 months, so you've got a year to activate your membership. And
okay.
And that seemed to be very popular.
Okay.
So a year to activate and a full year after that, because I know I'm going to be doing this for the next 2 years.
So now the questions are, how can we help people buy?
What do you mean?
Well, that's a way of helping people to buy what you're selling.
Yes, and make it easy for them and make it really good value for them.
I think a year might be too long, by the way.
Well, we'll see. I know before I made the offer, I thought to myself, do I still want to be doing this in 2 years' time? And I think the answer is yes. So
I think it's more too long for them, not you, by which I mean if they haven't bought it in 3 months. Well, it'll be interesting to see, won't it? There'll be some laggards, definitely. But, I put things on my wish list. If I bought them 30 days later, I'm lost interest in them. Yeah, I think a year's too long, but let's see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd rather do that than have people buy and then not be ready for 9 months and then think, well, there's no point in doing it now because I've only got 3 months left.
But I just still don't understand. So they had to pay something now, but they
could a whole lot.
Yes, but they didn't need to start until any point. So they've bought it, so they're not going to bail out. But I see. Yeah. All right. I thought you were saying you can buy it. You don't need to buy it today. You can buy it at any point now in the next 12 months at this discounted price, as long as okay.
They have to buy it now.
Yeah, I get you.
12 months to activate.
Yes. No, I'm all right now. Good. I was thinking you'd given them permission to buy at that in room price for 12 months.
No.
Okay. Good. Phew.
Okay. Good stuff. So, what about you then?
Well, I can now tell you 2 weeks update on the Worthing sale project, which is that when we spoke last time, I'd instructed the Worthing estate agents, and that was Monday, a week and a half ago. And last Thursday, they had the photographer in there, and on Monday this week, I'd still had no confirmation from them that the property was on the market. So I sent rather an angry email and discovered that everybody was away on holiday. But in return, they sent me a copy of the particulars and they agreed to put it on the market on Monday. I haven't heard anything since then. But they want me to go and visit them because this Know Your Client, KYC it's called, everything you do in the world with a firm of solicitors or buying a property or selling a property or whatever, you have to prove your identity with a copy of your passport and or driving license and a utility bill. And of course, I haven't had a utility bill for 2 years because I haven't had an address. And in fact, the beautician was asking me yesterday, what do you do about a doctor? Well, I haven't been to the doctor since 1987, so it's not a problem. But, she was pregnant and she'd got a child already. You do need a doctor when you're got children and you're having a baby. But the point of this is they want me to go and visit Worthing, and I offered them 2 days and nobody came back to me to say yes, come on Monday or yes, come on Friday. And I'm trying to get them. They've introduced me to their conveyancing wing, which is easier in a way because then you get it all under one roof as opposed to, so I think they're more likely to work together with their own own conveyancing. Yeah. And it's that or go to Worthing with my documents and then go to Enfield with my documents, and so what I'm trying to get them to do is let me visit Worthing once. So I'm coming to Worthing once with my passport and my driving license and my file. Let me give you everything both you and the conveyancing solicitors need. I don't want to make 2 visits down to the South Coast. And since I made that point, although they'd asked me to come this Saturday, nobody's come back to me. But I found out some good stuff, which is One of the deals the entrepreneurial estate agent suggested, you'll remember, was that we extend the lease and only pay for it on completion day. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Well, the freeholder has let me know that I can do that for only £8,000 to add another 90 years to the already 68-year lease, which would be brilliant. £8,000 is quite cheap to do that. I was expecting, in fact, the estate agents had suggested it might be up to 15. So a bit of a bargain to do that. I have to pay the freeholder's legal expenses, another £1,000.
Yeah.
But I'm not going that. That's my plan B. I'm not going that route to begin with. I'm going the path of least resistance, which is sell as is, offers in excess of 120,000. And if that doesn't work, then because too many people want to buy it with a mortgage, then we've got that second route up our sleeve. Doesn't make me any more money. It just might facilitate a sale. We'll see. So that's 2 weeks of the Worthing update. On the 21st of March, I think it probably only went on the market on 19th, which is something like a month to get it on the market. And I said to the man, it's so slow at this point. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll see.
A month to get it on the market. That is
I know,
crazy.
still bobbling along. Well, if you remember, the first 2 weeks wasn't their fault. It was that the tenant didn't turn up, so we had to do it again. Do you remember?
Yep.
Oh, anyway, there we go.
Exasperating.
I know. I've got a client who's selling her house, and she put it on the market and received an offer of immediately for 2,000 above, but she thinks it'll go for more than that. But she's insisting on having an open house day this Saturday because she doesn't want to live for a month in a state of constant readiness to have people come round. I don't blame her.
And also people just are terrible about not turning up. They just don't turn up. It's infuriating.
I know. I think that's why it's all so slow, to be honest, because people... And actually, I stood here in the living room this morning and I thought, if they don't reply to that email, shall I just not turn up on Saturday? Because not turning up is the way people live their lives now.
Yes, and also it's a blooming long drive to go, and if they're not ready for you...
Absolutely, Nicola. If they don't come back to me, why should I bother to go out of my way to chase them and go down there?
And what conveyancing solicitor works on a Saturday? I've never heard of.
Well, no, it's not. I'm not doing that. I'm going to their office on a Saturday, and because it's their conveyancing solicitor, they will approve my documents for their own purposes and for the conveyancing solicitor's purposes, because they're like cousins, brothers and sisters, and I can leave them with the documents that I want the conveyancing solicitor to have, because I don't have a printer or a scanner where I'm currently living. So, to get a lease to a solicitor is an impossible situation if you can't scan or copy or whatever. But the girl in the estate agent said, I'll scan anything in your file for you. So actually, when it comes to going to Worthing, it's fine. But I'm not gonna be the one that pushes that, because they've had digital copies of my driving license and passport. And if they don't pursue that, why should I volunteer to drive to Worthing?
I know, and it's crazy. I was able to open a business bank account the other day with just a photographed copy, a digital photographed copy.
Back in the Money Gym days, when I did lots of all of our accounting stuff, I permanently had digital and physical copies of my passport with me at all times, because I was constantly going into banks on our behalf where they would want me to prove my ID. You cannot. It's back to the point we made at the beginning about bureaucracy getting harder, not easier. All of these rules are set up to stop money laundering. Who's doing that? Crims. Do crims find a workaround? It's us. It's like what we go through at airports. Are we trying to blow up a plane? No. Do you see? It inconveniences ordinary people, and anybody who's of a mind to commit a criminal activity can still find a way.
That's right, yes, because they've got more invested, haven't they?
Yeah. Anyway, so let's move swiftly along and stop moaning, because that's a very low Abraham vibe.
Exactly.
Who or what's impressed?
Well, who or what's impressed is my new noise-cancelling headphones.
Oh, yes.
Made such a difference to the journey out here, I can't tell you, even though the bloke did sell me the wrong ones, the bugger, because I specifically asked for some with a microphone so I could do this sort of call with it.
Yes.
And he'd sold me ones without a microphone, which I was very cross about. And but the noise-cancelling from the engine noise was just fantastic. I'm sure that's why I had a much better flight out here. It was much better. And the other thing that has impressed me is just, the whole aeronautic industry, the fact that they can, going up and down to the Gold Coast, made me realise that these planes are flying up and down all the time. It was only an hour's flight. It's like going to Edinburgh. And, they turn the planes around really quickly. There are thousands of people flowing through these airports. It's unreal. Unreal.
I mean, they're just like commuter buses. They're like that bus you got on and plugged in your computer and paid for it using whatever that was called.
Swipey card or whatever it's
called. Exactly. Yeah, they're like buses, aren't they?
Yeah, they are when it's a short journey like that. And Just, the air hostesses, and they all turn the planes around under 15 minutes before they're loading the next load on.
I know.
Unreal.
You see, that's the commercial pressures on them. You said it was very cheap, didn't you, to do that?
Yes, it was 71 quid to return.
Well, the only way they can do it cheaply is by being that fast in the turnaround.
Yeah, actually, it's $71 now. Think about it. So
it's another bums on seats job. High turnover is where the margins work for them. Empty planes don't work for anyone.
Yeah. So that's who's impressed me that week. What about you?
Okay, well, I wanted to recommend a programme to you on BBC iPlayer called Travelling Blind, which is about, I was hoping it was going to be a series, but it looks like a one-off. It's still available until the 6th of April. It's about a blind man who is well-travelled, but always takes a sighted person with him. And the sighted person in this programme is Sarah Pascoe, who is a very clever, blonde British stand-up comedian who went to university and studied writing, I think. So she writes well, she's clever and all sorts of things like that. But she didn't understand initially the brief, which is you just need to be his eyes. You don't need to describe the full sensory experience of what you're experiencing to him, because he's experiencing absolutely everything that you are except for the sight. So she's only has to describe what he can't see. She turns out at the beginning of the programme, before they even set off, before they even meet, to be quite a timid, scaredy cat. And he, during the course of the programme, talks her out of that. And she realises that she's not doing the best job of explaining what he can't see, because she's over-explaining what he can feel. And once she is clever enough to twig onto that, the experience that the two of them have is absolutely amazing, because not only does she get braver drawing on his life experience, but before the end of the program she's taught him how to see things. I mean, it is absolutely, I got goosebumps just describing it.
Was it blubber? Did you cry? Was it blubber?
I did end in tears, but happy ones, I think. Actually, of just two strangers having having an enhanced experience of life through meeting one another.
Yeah, very nice. I will look that up.
Yes, I think you'll like
it. On my hands.
Yeah. You can only get BBC iPlayer from where you are if you have a VPN. Have you got one of those?
I do indeed.
Yes, lovely. Yes. Okay. Well, you could download it to watch on the plane on the way back then.
Oh, well, I'm not sure if my computer could handle that, but
no,
I'll do my best.
No, I don't download. I'm a streamer. In fact, I remember once saying to you and Alice, "Why do people download?" And she said, "Oh, so we can watch when we're not online." Oh, yes, of course. I'm always online, me.
Yeah, exactly. I might even watch it in the daytime, Judith. That's how radical I've got nowadays.
Well, I know, and there's nothing lovelier, actually.
In bed.
Yes, there's nothing more sort of indicative of the luxury of self-employment, to counter the opposite, obviously, sometimes, which we do experience, which is I can watch what I want whenever I want, and I don't have to watch it just in the evenings. No,
exactly. And it makes up for the fact that I'm recording a podcast between 9 and 10 in the evening.
And absolutely, yes. Well, we can blame the time difference of that, can't we?
Exactly. All right.
Now, let me before we say goodbye, let's just double check, because we're on Wednesday next week, which isn't. Is that right? Could you just have a quick squiz in your diary? I know. Well,
hang on. Let's just say goodbye first, and then I'm sure our listeners don't want to hear all this.
Well, I only needed a yes or no. Bye, listeners.
Yes. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.
How do they do it? Not a care and suffering. Wanna step into their world.
You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. The podcast is called Own It, Your Business and Your Life. Do come and visit us at ownitpodcast.com. We love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.